Do you remember the kind of childhood that watches the sky more than the screen? Yulong's began there, in a narrow neighborhood where the nights smelled of frying oil and paper, where his father fixed radios in a tiny shop and his mother taught in a neighborhood school. He learned early that sound could be mended, that a cracked speaker could become whole again with patience and careful hands. Those lessons lodged deep. Patience, attention to small things, and the stubborn idea that persistence might outlast talent. As a boy, he was unremarkable in the way heroes usually are before anyone writes a story about them. He ran errands, delivered parcels, and sometimes, when the shop closed and the streetlights threw long fingers across the pavement, he would sing to himself, small, private songs that nobody recorded. Once, a traveling troupe performed in the market square, and Yulong stole to the edge of the crowd, breath held, watching how an actor could make a single gesture feel like weather. He decided then that he wanted to learn that craft, not for fame, but for the authority of telling other people's small truths. School was uneven, a mixture of practical subjects and the occasional theater club that met in borrowed halls. His teachers noticed something steady in him, a way of listening that made other people feel heard. He joined the school drama group more out of curiosity than conviction, but the stage taught him a language he recognized as his own. It was slow work, line by line, breath against breath, the discipline of voice and posture. Even when rehearsals were cold and the props were secondhand, he practiced as if each silence might be the one that mattered. At 17, he left home for the city to study. The city was a different grammar, faster, louder, more merciless. He took odd jobs, serving tea, carrying equipment, sweeping stages, and used every spare hour to learn. He watched other actors, noted how directors shape space, and learned to read scripts for what they left out as much as what they said. In dusty rehearsal rooms, he developed what would become his hallmark, an ability to make stillness speak. Directors loved it and feared it. He never filled silence with noise. Instead, he made absence sound like meaning. The early roles were small but chosen with care. He avoided flashy offers that asked him to play versions of himself and instead sought characters with edges, a lonely shopkeeper, a young man who stands in for a family's lost promise, an understudy who learns to be brave in the wings. In those humble parts, he built muscles, timing, restraint, and the proof that presence could carry a scene without spectacle. Film school mentors would later call those years his apprenticeship, the slow accumulation of craft that no headline could manufacture. Then came a role that changed what producers saw, a supporting part in an independent film about workers in a coastal town. The film itself was not designed for mainstream success. It was modest, intimate, and filmed on a shoestring. But Yulong's performance, the way he breathed life into a man whose dignity had been written off by others, pierced through. Critics noticed. Festivals whispered his name. For the first time, audiences who did not normally watch art house films saw a young performer who could make ordinary decisions feel like moral acts. That project did not make him rich, but it did what matters most to an actor. It made people remember his face for reasons beyond attractiveness or scandal. With recognition came risk. Agents and managers offered routes that promised visibility, talk shows, flashy endorsements, and roles that emphasized image over substance. He turned many of these down. Fame had a hunger he did not want to feed unmindfully. Instead, he chose projects with directors who trusted actors more than cameras, scripts that refused cheap catharsis, and films that asked questions instead of wrapping them in tidy bows. His choices were not always wise financially, but they were coherent to a person who saw career as a practice, not a climb. When his breakthrough mainstream role arrived, it crept in like a tide. A melodrama about a family torn by migration chose him for a lead part, a son who returns home after years away, carrying the weight of absence and the ache of repair. The film balanced crowd-pleasing emotion with rigorous honesty, and Yulong's performance anchored it. He did not perform grief as spectacle. He performed it as weather, slow and inevitable. The film opened doors. Suddenly, he was no longer only a festival favorite. He became a face that advertisers wanted and audiences recognized on buses and in markets. Yet even as his name rose, he kept the rituals of his earlier life. Long scripts, late-night rehearsals, and calls to his parents that felt like a check-in rather than an announcement. That growing fame brought scrutiny. Paparazzi traced his steps, tabloids invented relationships, and every private habit found a public caption. It would have been easy to let the machine narrate his life, to trade mystery for exposure. Instead, Yulong protected what mattered. He learned to build boundaries. Certain nights were for family, certain interviews declined, certain details that would remain private. The paradox of celebrity is that sometimes the most radical act is restraint. He learned to perform it. As his star rose, he did not isolate himself in celebrity bubbles. He invested in projects that elevated other voices. He produced short films by young directors from marginalized communities, lent his name to causes that paid crew fair wages, and advocated for reasonable hours on set. It was the same ethic he had learned sweeping stages as a teenager. The work is shared, and respect for the people who do it matters. Those actions earned him not only goodwill but a reputation as someone who used influence to change conditions behind the camera, not just in front of it. Romantically, his public story became fodder for gossip, but privately, he moved carefully. Past relationships taught him restraint. He learned to keep tenderness away from tabloid narratives. When he met Yang Mei, their connection at first was not a headline, but a quiet recognition. The public would later narrate it as destiny, but for him it was a long apprenticeship's reward, a partnership in which another artist could match his calibration for craft and privacy. His craft continued to deepen. He took roles that required transformation rather than glamour. A teacher who loses faith, a father haunted by choices, a man who discovers he cannot salvage everything he loves. In each role, he found ways to make ordinary choices feel like confessions. Directors who worked with him noted his humility. He arrived prepared, listened to collaborators, and used silence as texture rather than filler. Audiences responded not just to his looks but to the solidity he brought to parts. He embodied a refusal to play emptiness as style. Awards followed, not as destinations, but as markers along a longer road. He accepted trophies with the same restraint he showed in interviews, gratitude rather than triumphalism. Shopkeepers recognized him, students sent him letters, and sometimes he signed an autograph with the same care he once used to neatly wrap a radio's wire for repair. He did not mistake recognition for completion. Instead, he used it to press for projects that mattered, films about working-class lives, dramas that resisted spectacle, and stories that honored small acts of dignity. Business acumen entered the picture as he matured. He began to choose partnerships that aligned with his ethics, brands that paid workers fairly, studios that invested in distribution for small-town theaters, and co-productions that allowed local storytelling to reach wider audiences. Instead of being commodified, he began to co-author the kinds of projects he wanted to see. That meant sometimes saying no to lucrative deals, a financial constraint that taught him new kinds of discipline. But it also meant that when he said yes, his work carried weight beyond box office numbers. There were setbacks, films that failed, public misreadings of interviews, and the occasional scandal that required measured silence. Each setback reminded him of his early life's lessons: to listen, to repair, to return to the craft. He rebuilt with the same patient hands his father had used on radios: disassemble, clean, rewire, and test. In those moments, his fan community did not evaporate. It grew more loyal. They recognized the pattern and saw in it the human struggle they too lived. As years passed, Yulong became more than an actor. He became a figure who bridged popular and serious cinema. He hosted workshops, mentored young actors, and made quiet but concrete changes to industry practices. He read scripts loudly in community centers, listened to stories that would never be filmed otherwise, and sometimes, in small theaters, he would appear unannounced to sit in the crowd and watch new directors break their teeth on first features. His presence validated their work, not as celebrity leverage, but as a fellow craftsman standing beside them. What makes a superstar, in the truest sense, is not endless headlines but the capacity to keep working when the lights dim and the crowd goes home. Yulong's ascent was not a single flash. It was the visible result of decades of listening, choosing, and insisting on humane practice. He never forgot the radio shop that taught him to value sound's quiet repair. He kept his mother's voice in his ear, reminding him to be patient, and his father's hands in his mind, teaching him that things could be fixed with time and care. When younger actors asked for advice, he gave them the same counsel he lived by. Find work that fits the spine of who you are, protect the quiet parts of your life fiercely, and treat every crew member's work as sacred. He believed art had responsibilities to truth, to labor, and to audiences who deserve more than spectacle. For him, fame was not a platform for vanity, but a responsibility to widen space for others. In quieter moments, he returned to small pleasures, a market breakfast, the smell of hot soy milk on cold mornings, the music of a street vendor's radio. Those things anchored him. They kept him human in an industry that often asks people to become myths. When he stood on large stages and accepted awards, he did it as someone who knew the value of small steps. The applause was lovely, but the work, the steady, incremental practice of craft, remained his true compass. And so, the story of Yu Long from childhood to superstar is less a tale of overnight transformation and more a long apprenticeship turned into durable craft. It is a story of a man who learned to listen before he learned to speak, who preferred small truths over sensational headlines, and who used the light of fame to illuminate rooms that had been dark for too long. The arc from a boy in a radio shop to a star on the marquee is a map of care for the work, for people, and for the commitments that make art human.